Michael Murphy. Hey, Mike, our storyteller tonight is Sophia Tamarkin. How you doing to me, Sophia? How you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Good, good, good. I like that hat. Real cool.
Thank you.
Sophia, yeah. Take it away.
Thank you. Well, it took me many years to cool down from some quite painful memories of my childhood in the former Soviet Union. I grew up in the atmosphere of tyranny and government oppression and overwhelming control and an ability to be free and express your true identity. But as a child, I also have good memories and I try to focus on those, of course. Winters in Russia were overwhelmingly cold and very long, as you can imagine. The government made sure that children had good memories. They built incredible ice castles in the middle of big squares in every city in the Soviet Union. Every castle had slides and mazes and translucent lights that were illuminating those beautiful ice blocks. I was mesmerized by that. The government banned all holidays that had nothing to do with with communist propaganda. Thus, religion was banned, and the only two holidays that were still celebrated widely was birthdays. It's still a very big deal for me, and New Year's. New Year's was a magnificent holiday. The main character of the holiday was Grandpa Frost, I would say. Interestingly enough, Grandpa Frost looked exactly like Santa Claus, but because religion was banned, of course, there's no way in the world that we could say that he was the Santa Claus. He had a heavy beard, he had a very warm coat, matching pants, and he gave out gifts. But just a coincidence. New Year's tree, of course, was a renaming of Christmas tree. It was erected in every main square of every city in the Soviet Union. Children loved those government celebrations because people were happy. Maybe because for about a month everyone were drunk except little children. Even Grandpa Frost, I think, was drunk at times. He had a granddaughter accompanying him to many celebrations, which is strange now that I think of it because he didn't have children and he didn't have a wife. But what Soviet citizen would ever question the past of the famous grandpa? Not a good idea. Apparently, I found out years later that my parents had to prepay to the government to get the gifts. But who knew then? I was a little girl, and at every celebration, those children that were lucky enough to have their parents pay the dues ended up with a little treat of an orange or tangerine, which is a real delicacy, a few chocolate candies, and waffles, or maybe cookies. We try to stock up on them to make it last way into the spring. One time I made it last till June. So you can imagine it was a real treasure. One year I was doing particularly well collecting those gifts. But I had a really good friend. Her name was Tatiana. Tatiana walked over one day and told me that she read a science magazine. She was a mature scientist of about, I would say, 7 or 8 years old at this time. She told me that if not a very smart person actually, stick out a tongue in the middle of the night and touch a metal pole, the tongue would immediately get attached to the metal, and that person would be stuck. Well, I was a curious little girl, and the next day when I went outside, there was not much to do. I started looking at that metal railing right next to my apartment building, and I almost heard it calling out to me, "Come, come and lick me." Well, within a minute or so, I was walking up to the pole, and within a second, you can imagine, I was attached to it by my tongue, twisted at a very uncomfortable direction. Those of you that had tried it before can probably attest to the fact that it's quite painful. I stood there with cold tears rolling down my cheeks. While Soviet government banned God, miraculously God did not ban Soviet citizens, especially silly little girls like myself. And I saw Tatiana walking out of the apartment building. She realized right away that I was in a difficult predicament because she was a mastermind behind this experiment. She ran up to me, looked at me with pity, and told me that apparently she knew the end of the chapter. If she was to pour a warm water on the metal pole, it would cool down and release my tongue. Well, I thought to myself, go and do it. But she was in no rush. See, Tatiana was not as innocent as a Soviet girl should be at the age of 7. She smirked and told me that if I wanted my freedom, I had to pay. And the price was all the gifts that Grandpa Frost and his illegitimate granddaughter gave me. Oh my God, I stood there. This was the ultimate decision of my life. I was 7. I was forced to decide between freedom and all my wealth. I stood there for a couple of seconds. I tried to contemplate, can I imagine living my entire life attached to this pole? No. I thought of my life, and I knew I had to pay this price. I nodded to Tatiana, and she swiftly ran inside. She came back with a cup of warm water. She poured it on the pole, and of course it cooled down and released me from it. I thought to myself that perhaps this is my personal Egypt, this pole, and the water is my splitting sea. I had to pay my price. I had no choice. Tatiana looked at me sternly. She followed me to my apartment. A deal is a deal. I was walking with my stuck-out tongue, my tears rolling. My tongue was so sore from trying to detach myself from that prison of mine of a pole. Tatiana looked at me as I retrieved the box with treasure: 17 oranges, 11 chocolate candies, 7 cookies, and 3 waffles. She took it all, but that was my price for freedom. Sometimes, on December 31st, I buy myself citrus and chocolate, and I sit there and I celebrate my freedom. Many years have gone by, but I still treasure freedom above all. In 1989, my parents were given a choice to leave Soviet Union and leave everything behind. And just like that time, a little girl of 7, they chose. There is no price high enough to pay to be free. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you. Excellent story. Excellent story. I'm just picturing the tongue stuck on that pole. Painful, painful. Shay, you there? All right. What advice